What is going on, guys? Winner Kills here, and welcome to a brand new post-commentary feature match here live from Locals. This is actually the round 2 feature match. The round 1 feature match won't be making it in because it was a bit of a blowout, and it just wouldn't have been that much of an entertaining match. But regardless, we're going to fast forward ahead, if you will, to round 2, where we have Kozmos versus Endymion Pendulums. So dice roll being done there, and of course, quick reminder, if you guys are picking up anything on TCG Player, don't forget to use my affiliate link down in the description below. It helps support the channel a great deal, so much appreciated if you decide to use that link. Would definitely help me out. So yeah, Kozmo winning the dice roll and unfortunately having to just pass. That is probably the worst option, the worst outcome when playing any deck. You get to go first by your own choice, and then you just end up passing, just completely letting your opponent do whatever they want. And as you can see, he's doing just that, resolving Servant after resolving the Spell Power Control, going to go all the way up into the Electromite. Luckily, our Kozmo player has some form of interaction here via the Infinite and Permanence, stopping him from completely getting blown out here by this Pendulum deck. He'll swing in for 18 with the Electromite and set 3 back row. Luckily for him though, turning off the Electromite proved to slow him down a little bit. Would have prevented him from getting an additional draw, which could have drawn him into an additional combo piece, which could have spelled game over from there. But looks like a Kozmo Town putting back a Dark Destroyer back into the deck to mulligan 1 card, hoping he can pick up a Tin Can or an E-Tally or something. Right now it looks like his hand is full of trap cards, which may not do him too good, so passing it back over to the Endymion Pendulum player now. And starting off with the Mythical Beast Basilisk, of all cards. Not really a Mythical Beast monster you see too much in most Pendulum decks, but this is an Endymion Pendulum deck, so things are a bit different in this build. He will Pendulum summon out the Mighty Master of Magic himself, and then use the Electromite's effect, main phase 2, to pop the Basilisk, to be able to add back from the extra deck and draw additional card. And then we'll be able to resolve the Magister of Endymion here. One of the few, less seen effects that gets resolved. Oftentimes we're seeing Servant resolve because most decks don't play Magister, but Magister being able to summon one from the extra deck, and much like Servant summons one from the main deck. And then battle phase, so swing in with 15 with Magister, and Magister will get a counter when he declares an attack, and just proving to be too much there. So unfortunately, our Kozmo player will fall to a bricked hand game 1. We're going to head into game 2. And of course, a quick shout out to Imperium Duelist. Guys, don't forget to check out Imperium. If you guys are interested in picking up that beautiful playmat on the right and other amazing 2-player cloth playmats, they've got a wide selection on their website. Don't forget to check them out down in the description below at ImperiumDuelist.com. And you can use that discount code at checkout, WinnerKills10 off, to save 10% off your entire order. So as we get started here in game 2, our Kozmo player going first and opening a bit better of a hand here this time around, which is nice to see. Actually getting to play some Yu-Gi-Oh is always nice, at least in my opinion. So he'll resolve the Tin Can to pay 5, and it looks like he'll get that Dark Destroyer to his hand and dumping a Slip Rider and a Kozmo Town to the grave. Getting started here now, opening with Servant of Endymion and following up with a Spell Book of Secrets. And that Secrets will get ashed, it looks like, and he does have the follow-up of Blue Boy, so it doesn't even matter in this case. Must be nice if you ask me. That knowledge will be able to tribute away that Blue Boy for 2 draws and put a spell counter on that Servant, which is exactly what he wants right now. But if you're the Pendulum player, you still got to be mindful of this Tin Can, which at some point is probably going to tag out into a Dark Destroyer, a 3k untargetable boss monster that can float, and it floats very, very well. So resolving a Desires now, putting a few more counters on this Servant, and after, of course, playing that Mighty Master of Magic, he will be able to get to a total of 3, which is exactly what he needs to start using its effect. He'll summon out 2 Mighty Masters, and attempt to go into the battle phase. He'll force the Tin Can. Dark Destroyer, of course, is going to come out and blow up one of them. He'll force to be able to go into the main phase 2 here. Attempting to activate now the Servant, and will be met with a heavy Storm Duster. That's going to blow up both scales, but our Pendulum player does have a follow-up in playing the Servant in one scale, and then Reflection of Endymion in the other scale, getting 1 counter onto his Servant. Cosmos is immediately just going to draw for turn, go right into battle phase, and run over the Endymion and end it there after setting one back row. And our Pendulum player top decking what could possibly have been the best top deck at this point. It's not only going to get him the Search of Drones, but it's going to get 2 counters, 1 on each of his scales, and allow him to draw into an additional card. And also essentially getting him another spell to play as well in the form of Hornet Drones. So we'll see Hornet Drones as Chainlink 1, back to the front as Chainlink 2, and then summoning out the Slip Rider. And Slip Rider is going to pop that Servant before he can have a chance to be able to resolve its effect. So Slip Rider coming out at the right time, giving his opponent the slip, if you will, as I like to say. And then Kagari, of course, is going to do what Kagari does best and add back a Sky Striker spell. He's going to slap down a copy of Necro Valley, which is going to be so clutch here against this Kozmo deck. A really strong floodgate that you want in this matchup, because it's going to stop your ships from floating. It's going to stop really anything from getting moved out of the graveyard, which is really, really strong here. So our Pendulum player most certainly does have to try and take advantage of this really good floodgate that he's seen. Maybe most likely drew it off of the Engage, that bonus cardo, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so Kagari is going to run over the defense position Slip Rider, and of course with Necro Valley being up, will not be able to tag out. So, you know, that's a little bit of, you know, weight off his shoulders there. And Kozmo going right into battle phase, you know, just running over the Kagari, getting in the damage where he can. He'll take 11, and then pay 5 for another tin can here this time around, revealing a Dark Destroyer, a Dark Lady, and a Sword Troopers. Really hoping for that Dark Destroyer if you are the Kozmo player, but unfortunately he does get the Sword Troopers to his hand and dumping the other 2 to the graveyard. Wouldn't be too bad that he gets that Sword Troopers to his hand, so long as he has some revival traps to be able to bring back, you know, the Dark Lady and the you know, the Dark Destroyer during his opponent's turn, because that's some of the best things that, you know, Tin Can sets up. Not only does it set up, you know, the pilot to be able to bring out the ship during your opponent's turn, but some good traps will be able to allow you to bring out the things that don't get added to your hand, of course. So Widow Anchor trying to force out the Tin Can here. And it'll just get tagged out immediately into a Forerunner. And then going to use Reflection of Endymion's effect here to be able to remove 3 spell counters and summon a monster from your hand that can place a spell counter on. And then, of course, placing a spell counter on each. Now, going to go into the battle phase here and attempt to crash the Reflection. And a bit of a mistake happens here, I believe, because the Reflection says, when this card with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add 1 Endymion card from your deck to your hand. And I believe he ends up adding Spell Power Control, which is not an Endymion card, unless I'm missing something about the wording of it and the effect. But he adds that regardless, which I don't think he would technically be able to add. But regardless, he could have just added the Magister instead. So overall, not too big of a mistake there. And going to be able to put an additional counter on the Abductor, which won't make too big of a difference at the end of the day. So now with having Magister, we'll be able to normal summon that to go all the way up into Electromite, which is going to give him the ability to put that Jackal King into his extra deck face up. Playing the drones now again, and then popping the token to be able to add back something from his extra deck face up. Of course, back to his hand, going to go for none other than the Servant of Endymion. Really just trying to set up his board as much as he possibly can here. He does have to pass there, unfortunately. He'll gain 1,000 off the Forerunner in the standby phase here, which is kind of crucial. So, of course, you know, Kozmo doing quite a bit of life point paying throughout a given game. So having that Forerunner established at some point is really nice. Be able to recur some of those life points that you've been slowly losing. You know, life points are things that you don't naturally regain over time. So having something like Forerunner to help you give those, you know, resources back is great. Battle phase Forerunner taking out the Electromite for 1,000. Dark Destroyer swinging for 3k, and then Sword Trooper tagging out for another Dark Destroyer and whopping on another 3k damage, which will prove to be too much. And we're just going to go into game 3 here. And Pendulums, of course, taking the lead. No surprise there, of course. Yeah, so Desires hopefully trying to draw him into some key combo pieces, and he will see that Spell Power Control, getting him into, of course, the Servant, and then following up with the Spellbook of Secrets into the Blue Boy, Blue Boy grabbing you the Spellbook of Knowledge. Now, this is like one of my favorite combos in Endymion Pendulums. I used to play this deck quite a bit, and it's still nice to see that the deck is still pretty viable, because, you know, the Endymion cards are also great on their own. And I love the splash ability of the Spellbook engine there. You know, you could even go so far as to play something like Spellbook of Fate in there, and, you know, Master, and get really creative with it and play a bigger Spellbook engine, you know, to sort of go alongside the Endymion engine. Just a really fun and powerful strategy overall, especially if somebody was looking to get back into the game, you know, picking up 3 of the, you know, Spellcaster's Command structure deck, I believe, or, you know, the latest Spellcaster structure deck. Great place to start. Really strong cards in this structure deck. So yeah, being able to resolve the Servant here, though, nonetheless, bringing out Endymion and playing another Servant in the scale to put another counter on his Citadel, and then setting 1 back row and passing, opting not to do too much else there. But there's one thing that's for sure, is he does have a spell negate, and that Kozmo Town will get activated, being able to put counters on the Citadel and the Servant. And then same thing with the Lure of Darkness, you know, going to get additional counters on all of those cards just as a byproduct of him going about his turn. And then that Kozmo Town retrieving the banished Sword Troopers, basically, you know, mitigating the cost of Allure to basically nothing. Normaling that tin can, setting 4 back row as, you know, a typical Kozmo turn we would see. And then going to, of course, pay the 5 and reveal a Dark Destroyer, the Slip, and what other card might he be going for? Probably a Forerunner. And the die roll of Fate, you know, take the Slip to the hand, dumping the Forerunner and the Dark Destroyer to the graveyard. Now, that's sort of a telltale sign with all that set back row. You might want to expect something like a back to the front, with those, you know, cards in graveyard being as set up as they are. Playing a Magister to start the turn to load up everything to 3 counters. That is the Servant and the Citadel. Following up with a Spellbook of Knowledge, dumping that dead Spellbook of Secrets to the grave to boost everything up by 1 more counter now, and also drawing 2 cards in the process. And then we'll see a heavy Storm Duster trying to blow up both the scales, but Servant, or the not Servant, but, you know, Mighty Master of Magic Endymion himself saying no, bouncing back the Magister, be able to play in the scale again. And then we'll see a back to the front, or not a back to the front, but the tin can tagging out rather for the Slip Rider, destroying the Servant here. And so that will clear that threat essentially, because you do not want that card to resolve, to be able to get a card like Jackal King out essentially for free. And on the summon of Electromite, we're going to see the activation of Kozmojo, but Electromite's effect will still activate because the effect is not being negated. So that first effect will still be able to resolve, which will allow him to put a Pendulum monster from his deck to his extra deck face up. And then, of course, Kozmojo resolving now, you know, of course, to be able to destroy that Kozmo monster and banish a card on the field or in the graveyards. And then, you know, as a result, being able to summon out the Wicked Witch. And then we'll see another heavy Storm Duster here. Just really not giving our Pendulum player a break at this point. And going all out to resolve another Desires. That main deck count getting pretty low at this point, I'd imagine. Really trying to hold on to what, you know, little advantage he has left at this point. We'll go into the battle phase and try to run over the Wicked Witch, but Wicked Witch will protect itself by paying 1,000. You know, of course, preventing it from being destroyed by battle or card effects for the remainder of the turn. And then attempting to use the effect of Kozmo Town to add back. He'll pay 100 to add back the tin can. And then slap it down on the field immediately, setting 1 back row, and then end phase, paying that 500 once again. This time revealing 3 more Cosmos of different varieties, sort of. Getting the Dark Lady to his hand this time. And that will be pretty nice. Monster negates, not going to prove to be too powerful here. Getting things like Slip Rider and Dark Destroyer in play are really going to prove to be much more beneficial, as they'll provide good disruption for things like, you know, setting up scales and things like that. Upstart Goblin being played, drawing through his deck a bit more. We'll see Jackal King being played, trying to bring out a Mythical Beast monster from his extra deck. And then we'll see a Storm Dragon's Return, which is going to attempt to summon one of his banished monsters, which is Slip Rider at this point. But he does have a Slip Rider in grave as well. So building the chain links here, you know, Storm Dragon's Return is chain link 1, the Endymion chain link 2, and Back to the Front is chain link 1. So won't get to summon the Slip Rider from banishment, but he'll be able to summon the one he has in grave to be able to blow up his other scale, which is the Jackal King, and then he'll play the Endymion back into the scale now, loading up counters now onto the Citadel, and at this point has enough to use the effect of the Mighty Master of Magic himself, especially now with this Hornet Drones and Widow Anchor being played. Of course, Hornet Drones as chain link 1, Widow Anchor as chain link 2, to be able to take the Slip Rider and summon the token, and then summon out the Endymion by removing 6 counters and destroying things on the field, on his opponent's side of the field, up to the number of things that he controls that can place spell counters on them. That's 2, the field spell and the Endymion. And of course, paying the 1,000 again to protect the Wicked Witch from destruction by card effect or battle for the remainder of the turn. And it has a bit of extra resources here now in the form of his Sky Striker token and that Slip Rider, so he's going to link the token off into Gagari to add back the Hornet Drones as a bit of security for the next turn, a little bit of a safety net, if you will. And then linking off the Slip Rider and the Kagari into a copy of Pentastag, as of all things. Not really a card you would expect to see, you know, at this point in the game, but it'll allow for some piercing damage of about 2,500 over that defense position Wicked Witch. And our Kozmo player, of course, getting started with their turn, going to use the effect of Kozmo Town to add back that tin can once again. But his life point's getting pretty low, and with a Pentastag on the board, not really a good position to be in at this point. You know, Pentastag, as unorthodox as it is in a situation like this and in an Endymion Pendulum deck, could prove to be pretty threatening here, and possibly, you know, leaning towards stealing the game. Because next turn, Pierce for another 25 and paying 1,000 on top of that to protect it. You know, you're out of life points at that point, so you really kind of got to act fast here, you know, and think of a way to sort of clear this field that he's established. So going to use the effect of, you know, activate another Kozmo Town, and it will get negated, and the Endymion will bounce itself back to the hand, being the only, you know, viable and good target to be able to bounce back. And he'll go into battle phase, and that clutch Widow Anchor, you know, coming in clutch, doing just that, you know, negating it and taking it here. And then end phase Tin Can for Strawman, Tin Can, and Dark Destroyer. And then getting another Wicked Witch onto the field, or end phase of Wicked Witch activating. And it looks like he got Tin Can off the Tin Can, or Strawman off the Tin Can, actually, which could be pretty nice with having that Slip Rider. So here we're going to see him resolve another Endymion effect from the Pendulum Zone, this time only opting to blow up one monster, and that is the Tin Can this time around. But now very quickly linking into a Nightmare Unicorn, clearing the Wicked Witch back to the deck to avoid its protection effect, and swinging for 22 for a game. Now, he already had 1,200 life points, so, I mean, if you go into battle phase with the Endymion, and you just attack over the 1,900 attack Wicked Witch, you know, you're going to take 900 there in that little interaction. And if you pay the 1,000, like, well, you won't even be able to pay the 1,000 at that point. I mean, the game is pretty much over, but nonetheless, the Nightmare Unicorn pretty much securing the victory there nonetheless. So, yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this feature match, round 2. The Endymion Pendulum deck taking the match 2-1. Bit of a grindy game there, only having 2 cards left in his deck, the Pendulum player, at the end of that match. But yeah, more feature matches on the way. Hope you guys enjoyed. As always, WinnerKill signing out. We'll see you guys in the next one.